Blood dripped down the blade. This was the final period of the Bakumatsu era in Kyoto. The swordsmen facing a red-haired young man were all taken down by him with just a few basic moves. Another group arrived. The captain of Squad 1 of the Shinsengumi wanted to step forward, but was held back. A more seasoned-looking man wanted to represent everyone in dealing with this fighter. This man was Seitu Hajime, captain of Squad 3 of the Shinsengumi. He wished to challenge the red-haired young man, who was none other than Hidekiri Batosai. On a dark night sometime in the past, a young Hidekiri was walking along when a young woman stopped him, intending to deal with this sword-carrying stranger. While running, Hidekiri accidentally tripped and fell. He explained that he was merely a wandering vagabond. The sword at his hip was just a sakabatu with its blade reversed inward, making it nearly impossible to cut anyone. After clearing the misunderstanding, Hidekiri was quickly released. On the other side of the village, the guards were fighting an extremely powerful assassin. Before the imposing figure, everyone immediately assumed this must be Batosai. The young woman from earlier arrived just in time and charged in with the others to confront the assassin. But she too was pushed back. Just as danger loomed, the red-haired young man arrived in time to save her from that deadly slash. The assassin was about to charge again, but as more guards rushed forward, he chose to flee instead. Before leaving, he did not forget to introduce himself as Himura Batosai of Kamiya Castion, also known as Hidekiri Batosai. The young woman eagerly wanted to pursue him, but the red-haired young man stopped her in time. That bandit was using another school's name to commit wrongdoings. Seeing the guards approaching, the red-haired young man had no choice but to carry the young woman and flee. He brought her to the Kamiya Castion dojo. The young woman explained that their school was just a small faction with only about 10 members. Over the past 2 months, someone had suddenly appeared, killing without hesitation while using the name Batosai, causing people to gradually fear their school and that name. The red-haired young man only reminded the young woman named Kaoru to be careful, and that the imposter was not someone to be trifled with. Kaoru refused to give up because this was the school her father had founded. Half a year ago, he had been sent to the southwestern battlefield and lost his life there. The one falsely claiming to be Kamiya Batosai had committed acts that tarnished their school's honor, and Kaoru could not let this go. Before her tears, Hidekiri simply turned and left quietly, still not forgetting to remind her that she should value her own life more than protecting some honor. The person who had bandaged Kaoru's wounds waited until they were alone to warn her not to be too naive or trusting, and not to be overly kind-hearted. Days passed, and Kaoru was strolling down the street when she saw a crowd gathering to watch something happening. At the center was Hidekiri being detained by guards for carrying a sword at night. Kaoru immediately rushed forward to protect Hidekiri. Her companion understood and bribed the guards with some coins, and Hidekiri was temporarily released. Kaoru asked Hidekiri about his situation, but he instead asked her about any leads on the killer using the Batosai name. Kaoru had temporarily learned of a possible location where the imposter might be hiding. While they were talking, the man accompanying Kaoru excused himself first. This was Kihei, a servant who had lived with Kaoru for a long time. Seeing that the young woman hid nothing from him and even invited him to stay for a few days, Hidekiri simply smiled and declined. Before Hidekiri left, Kaoru hurriedly thanked him for saving her a few days ago. Hidekiri kept his smile and quickly departed. After bidding farewell to the kind young woman, Hidekiri silently pondered what Kaoru had told him. It seemed his target was also that Batosai imposter. Night fell, and Hidekiri stood before Kihei's establishment calling out. An irritated man came out wanting to chase him away, saying that Master Himura was not here. Hearing this name, Hidekiri smiled and exposed the identity of this so-called Himura. Upon hearing this, the remaining men immediately emerged from all directions to silence him and cover up their master's whereabouts. Back at the Kamiya dojo, Kaoru was reading when old Kihei approached and handed her documents for land transfer. He had acted on her behalf to close down the school and seize this land. Behind him, the one using the alias Hidekiri Batosai also appeared. It turned out his real name was Himura Gohei, Kihei's younger brother. Kaoru immediately grabbed her sword, but was quickly surrounded by a group of men. Kihei had long wanted to take over this place, so he had schemed to have his disciple impersonate Hidekiri and the Kamiya school to seize this land and sell it for money. Kaoru tried to attack, but her wooden sword was easily snapped by Gohei, and she was tied up. Old Kihei easily took blood from her hand to stamp her fingerprint on the contract. Just then, the dojo doors opened. Hidekiri had dealt with all those men to get here. Hidekiri smiled and expressed that he quite liked Kaoru's innocent wildness, so she should not die here. As the men charged at him, Hidekiri easily dispatched them all with just a few slashes. Gohei, Kaoru, and old Kihei were all stunned by the speed and strikes of the red-haired man before them. After dealing with all those underlings, Hidekiri calmly revealed that Hidekiri Batosai's sword style was not from the Kamiya Castion school. It was an ancient sword art originating from the Warring States period, the heightened Mitsuruti style. Only then did everyone realize that the man before them was the true Hitakiri. Gohei immediately drew his sword wanting to duel this legend, hoping to defeat him and claim the Batusai name for himself. But Hitakiri easily struck him down with just one sword move. Hitakiri then pointed his blade at old Kihei, causing him to faint from fear. He gently tore up the land transfer contract, then apologized to Kaoru for lying to her about his identity. Seeing Hitakiri about to leave, Kaoru expressed her wish for him to help rebuild the Kamiya Kashin school. She wanted to know Hitakiri Batusai's real name. Hitakiri was silent for a moment, then turned and smiled gently, explaining to her that Himura Kenshin was his current name. After her moment of emotional overwhelm passed, Kaoru suddenly realized something was off. Hitakiri was a soldier from the late Bakumatsu era, so how could he look so young now? A week had passed since the fake Batusai was captured, but still no members had returned to the Kamiya Kashin school, which troubled Kaoru greatly. Hitakiri, now Kenshin, casually explained that since this was an era of civilization and enlightenment, it would be difficult for people to return here. Kaoru brought up the matter of age again, expressing disbelief that Kenshin was only 28 years old, far too young for a former Isshin Shishi patriot, but he just smiled without further explanation. On their way to buy supplies, Kenshin expressed optimism that people would eventually join their school. Just then, a young boy dashed past them both. Kaoru immediately grabbed him, recognizing this as a common trick of thieving children. Kenshin showed no anger. He gently handed his money pouch to the boy and asked Kaoru to leave with him. Instead, this made the little thief furious. He immediately threw the wallet back at them, declaring that he too was of samurai lineage from Tokyo, named Myujin Yahiko. The boy explained he had not intended to steal money, just wanted to tease the sword-carrying person walking around. Kenshin praised the boy for having a mature spirit and apologized for underestimating him. Myojin left without a word. The two continued walking. Kaoru asked Kenshin where he used to live, but he only said he wandered everywhere with no fixed residence. Kaoru looked at the calm young man before her. Most Isshin Shishi had abandoned their swords to join the Meiji government out of ambition for power, but not this man. Kaoru did not voice her questions, only told him to put away his sword since the guards were very strict. After walking a while, they temporarily parted ways. Kenshin was tasked with buying some food and drinks. Just then, a horse carriage stopped. The man inside gently asked Kaoru for directions to the police headquarters. Kaoru watched the carriage, wondering who this person was. Inside the carriage, the man had come because of rumors that Himura Batusai was here. The scene shifted to young Myojin. The boy approached a small alley to meet a group of people. These thugs came to collect protection money. Seeing the boy had no money, they immediately beat him and threatened that if he brought nothing by evening, he should not expect to live. Kaoru was walking down the street when she saw another crowd gathering. The police were arresting someone for violating the sword-carrying ban. Sure enough, Kenshin had been caught again. In the crowd, Myojin was also watching. Just as it seemed he would be taken away, a guard stepped forward. This was Lieutenant Yujiki, followed by a group of higher-ranking police officers. Yujiki drew his sword wanting to duel Kenshin to deal with him. Just then Kaoru heard the news and rushed over, but the high-ranking officers immediately stopped her from getting close. Yujiki threatened that if Kenshin did not draw his sword, he would slash Kaoru's clothes to shreds in front of everyone. Their actions made the citizens very indignant, but before those with power, people could only scatter in fear. Kenshin, who had been silent for so long, finally drew his sword to protect everyone. Yujiki smiled triumphantly as he and the remaining officers drew their swords. The scene shifted to an office where the police chief explained that the news about Himura Batusai being here was just an imposter. They all understood that this Hitakiri would not kill for personal gain. On the contrary, he was a hero of the Meiji era. The police chief recounted how a few days ago, the gang impersonating Hitakiri had been bound and left at the police station entrance. Under interrogation, they said the real Hitakiri had done this. While they were talking, a guard entered and reported that the sword-wielding police squad was causing trouble again. The police chief was very troubled because they were just thugs recently released from prison. But because of their high authority and one being an Isshin Shishi, nothing could be done. The Isshin Shishi were divided into 5 major factions: Satsuma, Choshu, Tosa, Aizen, and others. Satsuma and Choshu were currently the 2 major powers in the Meiji political apparatus. Satsuma controlled the police while Choshu controlled the military with absolute authority. The guard reported that those men had been defeated by a swordsman who was short, had red hair, seemed quite gentle, and had a cross-shaped scar on his left cheek. The man was startled upon hearing this and immediately had his suspicions. Back at the market, Kenshin had dealt with nearly all of the arrogant men, leaving only Yujiki for last. Kenshin did not intend to strike him, only requesting that Yujiki promise never to oppress the people again in exchange for his life. Yujiki immediately charged with his sword, using the strongest Satsuma sword technique of the Gaijin school to defeat Kenshin. but Kenshin used his incredible speed to dodge the attack and struck him down from behind with one slash. Kaoru and everyone immediately surrounded him with praise and admiration. Just then, a man called out to Kenshin. Seeing him, Kenshin smiled and approached to greet him. This man was named Yamagata, former commander of the Kihatai, the strongest army of the Restoration era, and also an Isshin Shishi. Yamagata immediately wanted to speak with Kenshin to persuade him to reunite with his fellow Isshin Shishi brothers, but Kenshin only smiled and said he had no intention of using killing to climb to high positions. Yamagata tried to persuade him, but Kenshin felt that the current political apparatus had forgotten the noble purpose of swordsmen, so he could not agree to join. Yamagata argued that times had changed, the samurai era had declined, and in the Meiji era, having a sword without authority meant nothing could be accomplished. Kenshin calmly replied that with this sword, he could still protect those he cared about, and that was enough. With that, he left with Kaoru. The police chief then approached and advised Yamagata not to punish Kenshin, since even though he used a sword, it was a very safe one. He also remarked that Hidakiri Batusai was quite different from the rumors. On the way back, Kenshin apologized to Kaoru for breaking her ribbon, but she was not angry and still assigned him tasks as usual. As they walked, Kaoru admired Kenshin's noble spirit of saving people. Elsewhere, young Myojin walked while recalling what he had witnessed. Just then, he noticed an old woman who had just dropped some money. Myojin was silent for a moment, then picked up the wallet. Meanwhile, Kenshin also thought about that boy, feeling that if times had not changed, Myojin could have become a true samurai. At dusk, Myojin silently gazed at the river scenery. As if resolved about something, the boy picked up a wooden stick and practiced swinging it for a while. The deadline had arrived, and those villains appeared again. Myojin declared outright that he would no longer work as a thief and was immediately beaten severely. Despite the beating, Myojin remained determined not to be a thief anymore. Kaoru was also walking home, thinking about Kenshin along the way. As she crossed the bridge, she noticed the boy she had met that morning being carried away unconscious by two large strangers. At a certain faction's headquarters, Myojin was lifted into the air. The one called the leader just laughed, speaking softly, asking what Myojin planned to live on if he would not steal. Samurai had no place here anymore. In the Meiji era, who still cared about honor, he advised Myojin to abandon his samurai identity and learn to live humbly, to continue being Tenishi's lackey. Myojin immediately spat out a mouthful of blood as his answer. He still wanted to leave this place. The remaining men furiously surrounded him and beat him mercilessly while Tenishi calmly enjoyed his fine meal. They beat him while mocking Myojin's lowly status. At the mention of his family, Myojin immediately fought back. His father had followed the flow of the times and betrayed the Bakufu. He had sacrificed himself for a greater cause. His mother had also passed away from grief over his father. They had lived proud lives, nothing like what these people claimed. One of them flew into a rage and wanted to kill Myojin, but just then, Kenshin broke down the door and rushed in to rescue the boy. He first tried using words to request Myojin's release, not forgetting to threaten that if they did not comply, this place would be wiped out. Tenishi was so frightened he nearly wet himself and fearfully agreed to the request. But Myojin was furious. He wanted to fight his own way out of this place, not have someone else rescue him. Seeing the boy's spirit, Kenshin simply smiled gently and offered to treat his wounds as an apology. Watching them leave, the men wanted to chase after them but were stopped by Tenishi. He could see that Kenshin was a true killer. Even if 500 men came, they would not easily defeat him, so sacrificing one person was acceptable. On the way back, Myojin was being carried while tears of helplessness fell. The boy wanted to become stronger without anyone's help. That way, he could have saved his parents. Kenshin just listened silently to what the boy said. After walking for a while, they arrived at the Kamiya Kashin dojo. Kenshin introduced Kaoru to Myojin, saying that from now on, Kaoru would become his master. Both of them immediately wanted to refuse, but Kenshin just smiled and said he had already paved the way for them, so they should become stronger together. The next day, all three gathered in the training room to practice. Kaoru handed Myojin a wooden sword, but the boy knocked it away, and the two began arguing fiercely again. Going back to the past, after the incident with the fake Batusai, the very next day, dozens of people appeared at the dojo entrance wanting to join their school. Kaoru was overjoyed, but Kenshin felt something was wrong. The moment he mentioned that he was not actually a member of this school, everyone immediately left. Kaoru grew more annoyed the more she thought about it, but Kenshin believed that people who joined only out of curiosity would not last long anyway. It was better to focus on teaching those who had genuine motivation. Myojin also stepped forward, saying he wanted to become stronger. What good was training with a girl? He wanted to learn Kenshin's sword techniques. Kenshin just smiled and explained that he had no intention of passing down the heightened Mitsurugi style to future generations. He was only here as an observer. The two continued arguing endlessly, unaware that outside, a very tense chase was underway. Inside the dojo, Kaoru kept searching for Myojin to teach him, but the boy stubbornly refused to become a member of this school, saying he would rather teach himself. He even pointed out that there were no other members here, probably because no one wanted her teaching anyway. Just then, two strangers ran into the dojo. Seeing them, Kaoru immediately rushed over. They seemed to know each other. Following close behind were two large men trying to capture them. Kaoru immediately used her sword to deal with the two pursuers, then questioned the two former members of the Kamiya school. They explained that a few days ago, they had encountered a group of drunken troublemakers in the city and had tried to stop them. Today, those people had come back for revenge. This time, another group appeared wanting to deal with them. Without a word, Kaoru immediately brought everyone inside and locked the door. Outside, Hachisuka, the leader of the Hishimenji gang, appeared wanting to deal with them. Kaoru recognized this group as even worse than the Yakuza. The situation was dire because Kenshin was out shopping. Myojin angrily exposed the two former members. They had reeked of alcohol since they arrived. The drunken troublemakers were clearly these two, not the Hishimenji gang. The two immediately felt guilty and confessed, shocking Kaoru. Outside, Hachisuka used cannon fire to blast open the dojo doors. From their words, Kaoru learned that her former disciples had gotten drunk, started trouble with swords, and even injured someone. Myojin felt indignant on behalf of the school, thinking these people were truly cowards. Seeing the men rush in, Myojin wanted to hand over the two offenders rather than protect them. But the gang leader wanted to deal with everyone for harboring criminals. Kaoru then put down her sword and stepped forward, wanting to accept the punishment on behalf of her former disciples. Just as she was about to leave, Myojin immediately rushed forward and knocked the leader away to protect her. This made the Hishimenji gang even more determined to deal with everyone. Fortunately, Kenshin returned just in time. After hearing from the underlings about Kenshin's strength, the leader did not believe it and immediately fired his cannon. Kenshin instantly used his sword to easily slice the cannonball in two. The leader immediately became frightened and called for his men to retreat. After hearing everything, Kenshin simply told the two former members to leave and forget they were ever members of this place, and to never touch a sword again. Though saddened, Kaoru still advised them to get proper medical treatment. After this incident, Kaoru was very upset. Kenshin only advised her to cheer up because things would not always go smoothly. Myojin then came forward. The boy bowed before Kaoru, picked up a sword, and accepted her as his teacher. Kaoru was deeply moved. The two officially became master and student, and Myojin became a member of this place. Kenshin smiled with satisfaction. A new day began with Myojin practicing swordsmanship while Kenshin chopped firewood. Myojin was annoyed because the sound of Kenshin's wood chopping disturbed him. He even asked if using a sword to chop firewood was not too showy. While they were talking, Kaoru cheerfully came in announcing that they no longer needed to worry about the dojo's living expenses. She had found a painting by her grandfather, a very famous ink painter, and planned to sell it to earn money for everyone. Myojin snickered and said something that made Kaoru smile sweetly before sending him straight to hell. Setting aside the commotion, Kaoru excitedly wanted to take everyone out for a grand meal. The Meiji era had brought many innovations to Japan, including many foods that had been introduced during this time. Among these new dishes was beef hot pot. In the restaurant, a group of drunken men kept eating loudly and talking boisterously, disturbing everyone. They kept mentioning terms like democracy and freedom as if they were experts. Just then, Kaoru and the others entered the restaurant to enjoy their meal. Kenshin's sword at his hip caught the attention of a mysterious person in the restaurant. The three also heard what the drunken men were saying but paid no attention, focusing only on their food. Just as they had ordered, a sake bottle came flying straight at Kenshin's head. The drunken men had started causing trouble after their endless arguments. Myojin angrily stood up and scolded them, demanding they apologize to Kenshin and leave. The men also stood up to argue back and wanted to use violence to settle things. The restaurant owner approached trying to mediate, but they roughly pushed her aside. Before they could do anything else, a young man caught her just in time. This was the same person who had been observing Kenshin earlier. The men immediately wanted to attack this good Samaritan. The young man was not afraid and simply stretched his arms and legs, as if a fool had just provoked a madman. Both sides took the fight outside while Kenshin's group followed to watch. Kenshin did not approve of using fighting to solve this problem, but since they were uninvolved parties, he remained silent. One of the men charged forward first, hiding a weapon in his hand to attack by surprise. But the young man stood firm without a scratch. Instead, the villain's own arm was cut by his own weapon. On the next charge, the young man simply flicked his finger to knock that one out. This time another man wanted to charge with a sword. Only then did Kenshin step forward to block him. In the end, the group could only leave in shame, supporting each other as they went. The kind young man then approached to chat with Kenshin's group. He praised Kenshin as a good person who had let himself be hit by the sake bottle rather than dodge, because if he had dodged, Kaoru would have been hit. The young man expressed interest in having a friendly match with him, but Kenshin just smiled and declined. The young man casually said goodbye and left, not forgetting to introduce himself and his whereabouts before leaving them all in utter confusion. That night at a suburban house, the kind young man from the morning was receiving a mission to eliminate someone. Those giving the mission were none other than old Kihei and Gohei, who had broken out of prison to come here. He had not intended to accept this mission, but when he heard what old Kihei said, the young man named Zanza immediately accepted with enthusiasm. He had been wanting to fight the legendary Himura Batosai. 2 weeks later, after accepting the mission, Zanza still had not made any move, which greatly frustrated Gohei and Kihei. But just then Zanza appeared. He had not acted yet because the atmosphere was not heated enough. The person Kihei had chosen to entrust his hopes to was Zanza, a professional troublemaker famous throughout the Tokyo underworld for fighting on others' behalf. He was an arrogant wolf who knew no limits but was truly powerful. Meanwhile, everyone at the Kamiya Kashin dojo was relaxing when Zanza appeared at the gate with his secret weapon. Zanza explained he had come as a professional fighter and wanted to battle Kenshin as the Isshin Shishi Himura Batosai. Zanza had thoroughly researched Kenshin. He knew Kenshin had been active from around 14 to 19 years old, starting as a true assassin before later operating as a guerrilla swordsman, then quickly disappearing after the Toba Fushimi victory to live under a new identity. Zanza had investigated everything to defeat Kenshin, but unfortunately could not uncover the root causes and motivations behind his actions, which was why he had come to confront him directly. In the distance, Gohei and Kihei watched smugly from afar. Kihei was not worried about Zanza losing. Even so, Zanza would certainly wound Kenshin, and they would rush in to finish him off when the fight ended. Kihei even had a gun ready for this purpose. Inside the yard, Kenshin asked about Zanza's motives. Zanza recalled his past, but said nothing, simply insisting on fighting Kenshin. He also mentioned that he despised the Isshin Shishi, those hypocrites who use the name of justice to commit evil. After a moment of silence, Kenshin accepted the challenge. He also asked if the ones behind this mission were Kihei's group and called for them to show themselves. Under pressure from both men, Gohei and Kihei had no choice but to stand up. Zanza snatched the gun from old Kihei, infuriating him. Seeing Kaoru approach, Kihei grew even angrier. He still wanted to take back this land. Kaoru heard this and fell silent in sadness. Zanza and everyone moved to another location more suitable for fighting. On the way, Kenshin asked Myojin if he was alright. Myojin was not too surprised and only asked if Kenshin was sure he could win. That spear looked very powerful. Zanza said it was not a spear. Both sides arrived at a riverbank with few passers-by. Only then did Zanza take out his weapon, introducing his real name as Sagara, known in the underworld as Zanza. The weapon was a Zanbatsu, a massive sword created before the Warring States period, extremely heavy and incredibly rare. Kenshin calmly drew his small sword, and both quickly took their stances ready to fight. The moment Zanza attacked, Kenshin used his speed to appear behind him and with one strike sent him flying. Just when it seemed like victory was assured, Zanza calmly emerged from the dust cloud, picked up his sword, and continued fighting. Only then did Kaoru remember. This man did not rely on his sword but fought using overwhelming physical strength. Kenshin was neither surprised nor shaken. He simply raised his sword once more. Gohei was feeling smug when Kihei reminded him not to celebrate too soon. The Zanbatsu had been easily deflected by Kenshin, so Zanza's chances of winning were still very low. He had already devised a new plan to defeat Kenshin. Truly a cunning old schemer. Both sides continued into their second round. Zanza once again charged forward with overwhelming force. Kenshin quickly dodged, even sitting on the blade to block the attacks before counterattacking Zanza. Kenshin warned that Zanza's sword had no chance here, then quickly executed a series of combination strikes to the chest, sending Zanza flying. Kenshin had long seen the weakness of this massive Zanbatsu. Though terrifying, it was also heavy and cumbersome, meaning the wielder could only swing up or slash down. This precise calculation made Zanza once again reassess Kenshin and his strength. Kenshin did not want to continue another round. He advised Zanza not to fight pointlessly and to surrender early to end it all. Lying on the ground, Zanza's memories drifted back 10 years to Taosendu. The Sekihu army, the vanguard of the military, was traveling everywhere to spread news throughout Japan that Isshin Shishi joining the government would have their taxes reduced by half. All citizens greatly respected this army and the good news they brought. Zanza, still young at the time, traveled with them. Squad 1 of the Sekihu was commanded by Sagara Susu. They had reached the northern part of Taosendu. When the army was resting in a small rural area, Zanza had the chance to talk with Captain Sagara. This man was taking in the peaceful lives of the people here. He treasured this new era where class distinctions no longer existed, where all beings were equal, and it was wonderful that Sekihu would spread this message. Zanza then asked Sagara if, after the reforms when all beings were equal, could a farm boy like him have a family name? He wanted to take the name Sagara. The two chatted happily, but their joyful days did not last long before the Sekihu received news that their army was being labeled as a fake government army and was being arrested and hunted by the government. They could not believe they had been betrayed and abandoned, and that the news about tax reduction they had been tasked to spread was a lie. Given the situation, Sagara could only have their army go to the headquarters at Shinosuwa to clarify matters. Zanza and his friend had to stay behind because it was too dangerous. After days of waiting, Zanza's friend Katsuhiro brought terrible news. The captain had died. At the village center, Zanza was horrified to see only Sagara's head remaining. He had been executed because the fake Sekihu army had spread false information, and his head would be paraded everywhere to announce this. Returning to the present, these memories gave Zanza the strength to stand up and continue fighting. That tragic past had made Zanza carry the character for evil on his back and doubt justice itself. Kenshin was shocked to hear the name Sekihu army. Zanza seized this moment to charge forward and push him back. Seeing the opportunity, Kihei immediately pulled out a gun and fired straight at Kenshin. It turned out he had more than one gun. But just then, Kenshin stood up unharmed. He had managed to use his sword to block the bullet in time. Kihei immediately changed plans and pointed the gun at Koyoru and Myojin. Just as Gohei was about to tie them up, Zanza's Zanbatsu came slashing through. Kenshin was no longer gentle this time. He immediately used his sword to deal with the scheming old man. Zanza then picked up his sword again, wanting to continue. Kenshin also turned his sword ready to fight on. This time Zanza used centrifugal force to increase his rotational power. Throughout all his years of wrongdoing, Zanza only wanted to become stronger to defeat the Isshin Shishi and avenge the Sekihu of the past. He harbored deep hatred for those despicable Isshin Shishi. Facing Zanza's sword strike, Kenshin responded fiercely. After sending the Zanbatsu flying, Kenshin used a powerful blow to finish his opponent. As the battle ended, Kenshin turned to call for a doctor to treat Zanza, but Zanza kept insisting on continuing the fight. Facing his stubbornness, Kenshin simply walked up and punched him, reminding him that the enemy of Sekihu was never the Isshin Shishi. He should think carefully about it. From afar, Kyoru shouted that Kenshin was not an Isshin Shishi like Zanza claimed. Myojin also yelled that he would protect Kenshin if Zanza still wanted to fight. Zanza was stunned by their words. Kenshin gently told him that the Meiji Restoration was not over yet. They were still in the Meiji era. Those who seemed happy were actually living in a time of class oppression. He himself was just a man trying to atone for the victims who had died under the blade of Hidekiri Batosai. Zanza was shocked. He recalled the past, about Captain Sagara from those days. What Kenshin said truly resembled Sagara, allowing him to see the captain's figure through Kenshin. Only then did Zanza accept his defeat and collapse. He silently apologized to the captain of old for losing his way, and apologized to himself for falling so low. A new day passed. Kaoru briefly mentioned Zanza's pitiful condition. Both Kaoru and Myojin advised Kenshin not to be sad about what Zanza had said. He truly was not such a terrible Isshin Shishi. Today, the three went to the beef hot pot restaurant again to celebrate. But just outside the door they found the three drunks from before lying in the yard. The one who had fought them was Zanza, now covered in bandages. Kenshin asked why he did not remove the evil character from his back. Zanza said his nature had been with him so long it could not be erased immediately. He also said he would observe Kenshin closely to see if he was truly a good Isshin Shishi. Zanza said he would no longer use the name Zanza. After all, that sword was broken, and he had quit the fighting business. Now he was simply Sagara. They quickly parted ways outside the shop, each beginning a new journey. Sagara continued coming to the Kamiya Kashin dojo to mooch food. Facing Kaoru's terribly grilled fish, only Kenshin smiled and praised it as delicious. Kaoru angrily asked what Sagara was doing here. Sagara simply said he was unemployed and broke, so naturally he had to come here to eat for free. While they were talking, the police chief suddenly appeared saying he wanted to speak with Himura, also known as Kenshin. He wanted to ask for his help. Entering the ancestral hall, the police chief first asked everyone present to keep this secret for the honor of the police force, then got to the main matter. He wanted Kenshin to defeat a thug. This person was commonly known as Kurogasa. He was currently targeting Isshin Shishi active in finance, politics, and government. He was a veteran swordsman who had never been defeated. Kaoru thought this person was a revolutionary wanting to start an uprising. But the police chief explained that Kurogasa was someone who simply loved killing. The more he killed, the more he enjoyed it. This man had appeared in Shizuoka 2 months ago, and over 100 people had already been killed or seriously wounded. The police could not handle Kurogasa because he cut them down before they could draw their guns. Moreover, he had the ability to paralyze people. Hearing this, Kenshin recognized this sword technique. He believed this person was bloodthirsty with a heart of iron and stone and should not exist in this world. The scene shifted elsewhere. A fat man smugly declared he did not need police protection. He had survived the Meiji Restoration. What did lowly police know? Besides, he had already hired bodyguards far superior. The police chief could not persuade him and could only bow his head. Just then, Kenshin slowly entered to greet him, with Sagara following. The fat man named Tani and his companions were terrified at the sight of them. Tani no longer dared to be careless. He immediately agreed to let Kenshin and Sagara stay and guard him, his arrogant attitude completely gone. Night fell, and police had surrounded the entire building. While waiting, Kenshin and Sagara played Go and chatted. Kenshin explained he did not like having to use the Badosai name, but he could not turn a blind eye to everyone's suffering. Sagara simply came along because he wanted to fight. Sagara then asked about Kiragasa's sword technique that the police chief had mentioned earlier. Kenshin explained he had only heard a rumor 10 years ago. Just then, screams erupted from outside. Sagara and Kenshin immediately rushed out in battle mode, not forgetting to pull Tani into a corner for safety. Just when they expected the enemy to enter through the main door, Kiragasa was already standing at the window, having easily dealt with a couple of fools outside. Back at the dojo, Kaoru was too worried to sleep, so she went outside to wait for them. Returning to the mansion, Kiragasa smiled smugly as if victory was assured. Facing this overwhelming presence, Kenshin asked Sagara and the others to protect Tani while he went to fight Kiragasa. But then Tani shouted for his bodyguards to step forward and fight to protect him. Kiragasa smiled with pleasure. Everyone who charged was killed instantly. Sagara was stunned by the speed and power before him. He immediately told everyone to fall back. But just then, Kiragasa used his technique on everyone to paralyze them. Besides the weak bodyguards who were frozen, Sagara could still move though with great difficulty. Kenshin seized this moment to charge at Kiragasa, but was quickly cut on the hand. Kenshin was not afraid. He recalled the rumor from 10 years ago about a man who belonged to no faction, an assassin from the Hidakiri village named Yudu Jain. Kiragasa also knew about Kenshin's identity as Himura Batusai. He immediately used the paralysis technique again, but Kenshin easily repelled it once more. Kiragasa then seized the opportunity to turn and deal with Tani first to complete his mission. At this critical moment, Sagara quickly broke free from the spell and rushed to protect Tani. Though he himself was stabbed, Kenshin used this chance to attack Kiragasa and break his paralysis technique. Kiragasa quickly retreated. He decided to change his target from Tani to Kenshin and promised they would meet again soon to continue their fight. The police chief worried about Kenshin, but Kenshin thought this was actually good. Sagara vaguely realized this was why Kenshin had accepted the police chief's request. Kenshin only said the mission had failed. That man was no ordinary foe. Though this was the incident with the fewest casualties among Kiragasa's massacres, Kenshin was not pleased because he had not dealt with a mastermind. Sagara asked about Kiragasa's technique. Kenshin explained it was a sword art formed from 3 character shapes, 1, 8, and 10, combined to create an extremely dangerous ultimate technique that only its creator could use. From that battle, Kenshin noticed Kiragasa did not use the technique on those attacking him, only on those who had lost their will to fight or wanted to flee. Sagara remained optimistic, believing Kenshin would handle everything. Kenshin said that 10 years ago, he had vowed never to kill again, while Kiragasa continued to slaughter. The balance was uneven. He recalled the rumor from 10 years ago. Someone had said Kiragasa was a member of the Shinsengumi, the most powerful faction on the Bakufu side and sworn enemies of the Isshin Shishi. But he had defected and reappeared under the Isshin Shishi. This was someone who acted purely out of bloodlust with supreme power, truly difficult to deal with. Kenshin determined he would have to fight Kiragasa. He only asked Sagara to help him with one thing. At dawn, Sagara returned to the dojo and found Kaoru dozing off in the yard. After waking and not seeing Kenshin, Sagara explained that Kenshin had now become a target and would not come here anymore. He had asked Sagara to look after everyone while he was away. Kenshin understood that Bakumatsu assassins usually operated near rivers, so he had gone there to find Kiragasa. Hearing this, Kaoru immediately wanted to go find Kenshin to help him. Sagara warned her not to act recklessly. Kaoru did not just want to go there to help Kenshin. She also worried that after the fight, Kenshin would leave and never return. After all, he was just a wanderer. Who knew when he would come or go? Myojin and Sagara could only watch Kaoru turn and leave. By the riverbank, Kenshin sat silently waiting. But the one who arrived was not Kiragasa, but a very angry Kaoru. Kaoru wanted to stay and wait with Kenshin. Kenshin said if he had to fight while protecting someone else, he would not be able to win. Kaoru was silent for a moment, then untied her hair ribbon and gave it to Kenshin as a token of promise. Kenshin smiled and accepted it, promising to return it to her. Just then, Kiragasa suddenly appeared like a ghost, grabbed Kaoru, and sped away by boat. Kenshin immediately gave chase, but his speed was no match. Kiragasa threw him a note arranging their battle date before departing. This action only deepened Kenshin's hatred. That evening, Kenshin carefully read the note, then tore it to pieces. He slowly made his way to the designated meeting point deep in the forest at midnight. No meeting, no return. Elsewhere, Kirigasa leisurely lit a cigarette while waiting for Kenshin, with Kaoru tied up in a corner inside a stone memorial. He had taken Kaoru hostage mainly to enrage the Himura Badosai within Kenshin, to drag him back to being the killer he once was. The way Kenshin fought now, Kirigasa could easily kill him, and that would not be interesting at all. Kaoru kept insisting that Kenshin would never become such a person. He was truly a very kind man, nothing like what this villain was claiming. Kirigasa only sneered at Kaoru's words, saying she was the one who knew nothing about Hidakiri Badosai, and he knew far more shocking truths. Kenshin was once someone whose mere name made people wet themselves in fear, someone who did not hesitate to bring eternal death to his enemies. The first time they met, Himura Badosai and Kirigasa, was in Kyoto during the Bakumatsu era, when neither had become wanderers yet. Being on opposite sides, they immediately charged at each other in merciless combat. His subordinates were all dealt with by Kenshin in an instant. But at that time Kenshin had left immediately instead of finishing off Kirigasa. Witnessing Kenshin's cold bloodlust back then filled Kirigasa with immense excitement. That was part of what drove him to kill both allies and enemies alike, becoming a cold-blooded killer like Kenshin. Now, two murderers slaughtering each other would be wonderful. He wanted to settle the score here, and if he could kill Kenshin, all the better. Kirigasa would not let Kaoru speak any more naive words. He wanted her to witness everything firsthand. Just as the clock struck midnight, Kenshin arrived with a sharp face and piercing eyes. He no longer maintained his calm demeanor, but quickly drew his sword, turning the sharp edge toward his opponent, ready to fight immediately. Once ready, both charged at each other for a sword duel. Their strength seemed evenly matched. Kirigasa's techniques could not bring Kenshin down, but witnessing such a cold Kenshin shocked Kaoru immensely. Kenshin was the first to be struck when his enemy used not one but two swords, wounding his shoulder. The enemy had taken advantage of Kenshin's momentary lapse. Kirigasa felt it was not exciting enough since Kenshin had not yet unleashed his full power, so he used his paralysis technique on Kaoru, making her unable to breathe for 2 minutes, just enough time to kill someone. Kenshin grew even more furious at the man before him. He immediately struck Kirigasa in the face, breaking his nose. Being hit only made Kirigasa more delighted with Kenshin's demeanor. He reset his nose and stood up again. Just as he was about to attack, Kenshin used a technique to force Kirigasa to release the paralysis on Kaoru. But Kirigasa said only when Kaoru saved herself, or when the one who cast the spell was killed, could she be saved. Given this situation, Kenshin seemed to have no choice but to kill the enemy before him, but that would mean betraying his own vow. At this moment, Kirigasa placed an extremely powerful self-suggestion on himself to unleash all his body's latent power. Kirigasa smugly declared himself the strongest, and out of respect for Kenshin, he would use his most powerful and despicable technique to eliminate his opponent. Kenshin then sheathed his reverse blade sword, his eyes filled with hatred wanting to tear Kirigasa into 100 pieces. Kirigasa saw Kenshin assuming the stance for Batu Jutsu, an extremely powerful technique, and was stunned with amazement. He began to hesitate. One wrong move and that technique could kill him, but if he could dodge it, eliminating Kenshin would be absolutely guaranteed. Despite his hesitation, Kirigasa charged forward smugly, believing the weakness of the reverse blade sword would slow Kenshin's swing speed. Indeed, he managed to dodge. Kirigasa smugly swung his sword forward again, but this time Kenshin did not use his blade. He directly used his scabbard to block the attack. The failed strike pushed Kirigasa back. Kenshin raised his sword. With just this final blow, he could completely kill Kirigasa, but he simply stood frozen in that stance. Kirigasa smugly provoked Kenshin to attack quickly, making him truly prepare to swing in anger. Kaoru witnessed everything. After recalling all that Kenshin had told her, she could not let him return to his old ways. After understanding everything, Kaoru used her own strength to break the paralysis spell, then shouted loudly for Kenshin to stop. Seeing Kaoru had escaped the spell, Kenshin immediately halted his movement and rushed to catch her as she was about to fall. Just then, Kirigasa had regained his strength. He seized this moment to point his sword at both of them. Kenshin remained completely calm. He waited for the blade to come down before striking first, slashing straight into Kirigasa's chest. Kirigasa showed no fear at being cut. Even as he lay defeated on the ground, he continued calling for Kenshin to kill him. Otherwise, his survival would lead the police to discover the figure within the Meiji government who had hired him as an assassin. Kirigasa revealed a harsh truth. Even with reforms and progress making public killings impossible, they would simply do it in the shadows. Finally, Kirigasa became completely still. His eyes rolled back white. He had descended into hell. Kenshin remained silent before his words, contemplating what had happened. On the way back, Kaoru thanked him for saving her. Kenshin also thanked her, because if she had not stopped him, he would have become a killer again. Kenshin also took out the hair ribbon to return to Kaoru, but because of the battle, it was now soaked in red blood, losing its beautiful blue color from before. This made Kaoru furious, and she scolded Kenshin thoroughly. The next day, dawn came again. Myojin and Sagara saw the two return and joyfully welcomed them, as if this place was home and they were family. In the village, a woman was fleeing from mysterious men, looking extremely rushed and panicked. At the dojo, Kaoru was searching everywhere for Kenshin, but could not find him. Sagara was also absent. Myojin explained that Sagara had dragged Kenshin along somewhere. Myojin also mentioned they had gone to a restaurant called Shueya, a place that frequently operated gambling dens. Hearing this, Kaoru was shocked and indignant at their actions. At the Shueya restaurant, both Sagara and Kenshin were gambling. Thanks to Kenshin's judgment and sharp owl-like eyes, they quickly won a lot of money continuously. Sagara had brought him here for that reason, and also to cheer Kenshin up after the Kirigasa incident. Kenshin was not particularly enthusiastic about these games of chance. While they were playing in the gambling den, the woman from the beginning had been cornered. She had no choice but to run inside this restaurant called Shueya. Inside, Sagara played while asking about Yolta, a candy shop owner in the village and also a good comrade of his. Everyone then sadly told him that Yolta had passed away at the beginning of the month, which shocked Sagara greatly. Yolta had died from opium and drugs after taking a large amount into his body and overdosing. Hearing this, Kenshin felt some suspicion rise within him. After all, drugs were very expensive. How could ordinary people buy such large quantities? Just then, the woman from before entered the room and interrupted everyone. Seeing Kenshin had a sword, she immediately approached and asked him to save her from the villains chasing her. Two thugs had arrived wanting them to hand over Megumi. Sagara immediately knocked out the fat one across from him with one punch. The remaining one threatened them fearfully, saying they were members serving Kanryu. But Sagara was not afraid and punched him too. Unlike Sagara and Kenshin, the others became cautious and fearful upon hearing Kanryu's name and stopped their rescue effort. Sagara explained to Kenshin that this Kanryu was a young businessman living in the outskirts of town. Nobody knew what shady business he was in, but lately his wealth had skyrocketed. A very suspicious person, but with enough power to make everyone wary. He had become a major force here. Megumi explained she was not Kanryu's lover and knew nothing about these people. But then a strange man suddenly appeared. He sat in the corner of the room smiling as he exposed Megumi. This woman was actually someone the leader had ordered to be watched constantly and had escaped from their camp, which was why she was being pursued. Megumi angrily ordered him to go back and tell Kanryu that she would find a way to escape from them. Some wanted to step forward and deal with this strange man, but they were quickly dealt with by him. After making his threats, the strange man quickly fired at Megumi to bring her back to the organization's mansion. Kenshin quickly rushed forward to protect everyone. Sagara and he did not hesitate to charge at this bastard. Megumi secretly assessed that these people were no ordinary fighters, then straightforwardly asked them to help her escape from Kanryu. Without a word, Sagara immediately grabbed Megumi's hand, wanting her to take responsibility for his two friends being injured. During the struggle, Megumi dropped some paper packets. Upon closer inspection, they were drugs. At the Kamiya Kashin dojo, Kaoru and Myojin were practicing when they heard everyone return. Kenshin introduced Megumi to Kaoru. Sagara did not want to reveal the drug matter, so he chose to say misleading things that shocked Kaoru. She immediately scolded them both for engaging in such despicable human trafficking. Megumi then approached Kenshin trying to seduce him, which annoyed Kaoru. Sagara could only tell them to stop teasing Kaoru, but she was so angry she threw all three out of her dojo. Megumi wanted to hire Kenshin as her bodyguard, but both Sagara and Kenshin focused on quickly investigating the situation and the entire matter. Sagara deeply hated opium and wanted to get to the root of this. Just then, a friend from the gambling den ran to them saying something had happened. At the bridge, townspeople were crowding around to see what was going on. The police had pulled two bodies from the river. Coincidentally or not, they were the two who had attacked them and failed that morning. Kenshin observed for a moment and spotted Kanryu's people. The tall man also observed him and asked his subordinate Bashimi about Kenshin's whereabouts. Bashimi wanted to deal with them, but with everyone around, a direct confrontation was not convenient. Kanryu ordered his subordinates to deal with and capture both Kenshin and Megumi. Kenshin's group also noticed Kanryu's people were there. According to Megumi, the tall man was the leader of Oniwaban, Kanryu's intelligence agency. He was an extremely capable man named Shinomori Ayashi. This organization was far more terrifying than a mere merchant like Kanryu. The group quickly identified their combat targets. Both sides glared at each other with burning hatred. That evening, Kenshin drew a diagram of Kanryu's organizational structure. He asked Megumi about the drug issue, but she remained silent since it was not part of her assigned task. Megumi did not truly trust them at this point. Her main goal was to leave this place, as the probability of Kenshin defeating the Oniwaban was too low. Outside, Kaoru anxiously eavesdropped on their conversation. Sagara comforted her not to worry too much. She knew what Kenshin was like. He only wanted to do good and save people. Then Kenshin stepped out of the room. After giving everyone the diagram, he reminded Kaoru to be careful about the coming situation. He also promised to protect Kaoru properly, not like with Kirigasa. Hearing this, Kaoru blushed and nodded in agreement. Just then, Myojin, who had been eavesdropping, appeared and angrily demanded to join them. From afar, Megumi watched them talking to each other. She unconsciously recalled her past circumstances about her father, mother, and beloved siblings. Just then, a large explosion sounded at the front of the house. Kanryu's people had arrived. Facing them was a creature that looked half human, half monster, extremely terrifying with his enormous body. This one called himself Hayatoko, a member of Oniwaban. Sagara wanted to handle it himself and make them reveal information about the opium. He immediately charged forward to choke Hayatoko, ignoring Kenshin's advice. But this monster did not dodge. Instead, he waited until Sagara got close before detonating the bomb in his mouth. Seeing Sagara uninjured, Hayatoko was not too alarmed and wanted to continue fighting. After all, if one bomb did not work, a few more would kill someone. From afar, Bishimi smugly observed the situation, believing Hayatoko could easily burn these people to ashes. After observing for a moment, Kenshin drew his sword to fight. He easily used his sakabatu to cut the flames in two. Hayatoko did not give up and continued launching fire attacks, but Kenshin kept using his sword to defend. Seeing no one paying attention to her, Megumi wanted to seize this opportunity to escape. Kaoru immediately ran over to stop her, reminding her that Kenshin was fighting to protect her, so she should not play the treacherous villain here. Megumi bluntly said that Kenshin and the others could not defeat mid-level Oniwaban agents. The current situation was just buying time. Kaoru firmly believed Kenshin would win because he was no ordinary swordsman. Indeed, Hayatoko still had not touched a single hair on Kenshin. In his fury, Hayatoko did not hesitate to take out the oil canister from his back to fuel his power. Kenshin wanted to continue fighting, but Sagara stopped him, saying this was a fight between the two of them. Kenshin nodded and stepped back. Sagara's provocation infuriated Hayatoko, who immediately spat out a burst of flames. Sagara was not burned by the fire. Instead, he punched Hayatoko hard in the mouth and pulled out some kind of pouch from inside the monster's mouth. This was what had allowed the bastard to breathe fire. Hayatoko was exposed but showed no fear. He believed Sagara was now injured and could not throw another punch. This time the enemy used a normal attack. Since Sagara could not use his hands, he simply raised his leg to take down this bastard from Oniwaban. Megumi was stunned by these two men's performance. Kaoru simply said she did not know much about them either, but these were her two most trustworthy comrades. Megumi silently watched them all talking to each other. When it was over, everyone stood around Hayatoko not knowing what to do with him. Bishimi watched from afar and was furious at the failed plan. He blamed Megumi and wanted to take this chance to quickly eliminate her. Kenshin immediately sensed the killing intent and tried to rush over, but the attack was too fast for him to reach in time. At this critical moment, Myojin, being closest, quickly rushed forward and used his hand to block the projectile for Megumi. Though the boy did not understand what was happening, Kenshin's current mission was to protect this woman, so he wanted to contribute. Just as he finished speaking, Myojin collapsed in pain. The projectile was laced with poison. Just as Bishimi was about to attack again, Kenshin rushed over to deal with him. But this time another person appeared and pulled Bishimi away in time. The situation was critical. The third person proactively proposed a ceasefire. Kenshin demanded he hand over the antidote, but was unsuccessful. This person quickly seized the opportunity to push Kenshin back and escape carrying the other. The situation was dire. Kenshin chose not to pursue but to stay and treat Myojin first. Kaoru was about to suck the poison from the wound when Megumi rushed over to stop her. Sucking poison from the wound would accelerate infection and make things worse. She examined him and quickly recognized that Myojin had been poisoned with Dachira. Megumi immediately ordered everyone to act quickly and call a doctor to save the boy. After treatment, the doctor announced that Myojin had temporarily stabilized and only needed 3 to 4 more days of rest. Before Sagara and Kaoru's thanks, the doctor said he was not the one who saved Myojin. It was all thanks to the prescription Megumi had written. It contained Western medical knowledge. From their words, the doctor was amazed to recognize Megumi. She was the assistant of a physician who had died 3 years ago whom he knew. At this moment, Megumi was preparing to leave when Kenshin caught her. He simply thanked her for saving Myojin. Megumi said she would leave tomorrow to keep them safe from Kanryu's people. From her words, Kenshin learned that Megumi was from Aizu. He gently asked if she could tell the truth. Inside the room, the doctor also spoke of the Takani family, a prestigious family in the medical world. Both women and children were skilled in medicine, and they were a very kind family. The family had left Japan to study Western medicine in Holland. They were specially pardoned, but when they returned to Aizu, war broke out there. The Takani family joined the war but left Megumi behind. After the war, she became alone. 5 years later, Megumi came to Tokyo and became an assistant to a physician. After that physician disappeared, she also vanished. The doctor wanted to speak with Megumi. Only then did Sagara and Kaoru remember and fear she had already fled. Outside, Megumi recounted the story from 5 years ago. The physician she assisted had secretly partnered with Kanryu to produce drugs. What Megumi had was called Spider's Web, twice as addictive and 4 times as profitable. Kanryu wanted to sell large quantities on the market and needed the formula for this Spider's Web drug. The physician had been killed due to internal conflicts. Megumi became the only one who knew how to make it, so she was kept by Kanryu. Megumi left because she did not want to continue doing evil. She wanted to save people and find her lost mother and brother. Kenshin understood everything. He told her she had done well and should stay here for a while. Kaoru and everyone also emerged from the dark alley. Kaoru no longer showed hostility toward Megumi. She just told Megumi not to touch Kenshin, understood. Elsewhere, Ayashi had received news. The masked one named Hanya reported that Kenshin was no ordinary man. In fact, he himself was seriously wounded and could not fight for the next 2 or 3 days. Ayashi ordered Yash, another subordinate, to dig up Kenshin's past for the organization. In truth, he already had his own suspicions. The next day, Sagara walked silently down the street, gazing at the pile of opium in his hand. In the distance, an old woman selling candy was being cheerfully talked to by children. This image reminded him of his unfortunate friend Yolta and made him even angrier. At the dojo, Megumi had shown off her ohagi making skills and everyone loved them. Kenshin even said Megumi's cooking talent seemed better than Kaoru's, which infuriated Kaoru. Sagara returned at this moment, bringing a new opium sample that was causing a stir throughout the village. This was the hot item on the market now. Sagara seemed very hostile toward Megumi, someone who had made opium and harmed people. He made some sarcastic remarks then quickly left the dojo to rest. Kenshin only comforted Megumi not to be sad. After all, she had been forced. Moreover, it had been over a week and Kenryu's people still had not made any new moves. Sagara was very frustrated about that, which was why he had spoken rudely. Nevertheless, Megumi still took to heart the title of opium maker, a deeply insulting label for her. In the afternoon, Megumi was washing dishes when she saw a bookseller enter. While Megumi was off guard, he instantly transformed back into Hanya and threatened that if she made any rash moves, he would pour mercury into the well and kill everyone here. Megumi had no choice but to follow him to meet Kenryu. In the forest, Kenryu smiled and once again proposed that Megumi return to make drugs for them. He also threatened that if she did not comply, they would burn down the Kamiya Kashin dojo. After all, Kenryu's forces were terrifyingly widespread across the country. Dealing with a dojo with just a few people was as easy as turning his palm. Kenryu also reminded her that she had already made opium. What face did she have to meet her family or claim to be a member of the Takani family? She might as well continue down this evil path. Kenryu warned they would set the fire at midnight. She should think carefully about her choice. Then he quickly left. Ayashi was also there. He wondered if this plan would succeed. Kenryu smiled inscrutably. After all, they had Himura Batosai there. Direct violent provocation would not work. Better to let her leave on her own. That way, Kenshin would not take action. Megumi sat down on the ground in despair, tears falling onto the cold earth. In the evening, everyone received the letter Megumi had left behind. The letter essentially said she apologized for leaving silently. Since Kanryu's people would no longer attack, she had decided to return to Aisu. She also thanked everyone for taking care of her this past week. Kenshin blamed himself for not protecting Megumi well. He concluded that Kanryu's people had threatened her, which was why she wrote this letter to leave. Kenshin wanted everyone to go rescue Megumi, but Sagara said he did not want to rescue some opium-making woman. Kenshin gently reminded him that his behavior was not like his usual self. Sagara was silent for a moment before confessing. His friend, his comrade, was a candy seller, a gambling buddy, talentless but very kind-hearted. That person had died from the drugs Megumi made, which was why he did not want to help someone like her. Kenshin only said Megumi was also a very lonely person. She too wanted to find comrades to call family, so they could not abandon her. Myojin wanted to come along. The boy struggled free from Kaoru's grasp and ran after Kenshin. After a moment of silence, Sagara reminded Kaoru to prepare bathwater for 5 people, then went with Myojin and Kenshin to Kanryu's place. That evening, they arrived at the gates of Kanryu's compound. After careful discussion, all 3 quickly charged in to take down one enemy after another. In Kanryu's room, he smiled welcoming Megumi back, then without further words ordered her to continue producing Spider's Web drugs for trade with outsiders. Megumi slowly lured Kanryu closer, then immediately drew a blade and slashed at him. She wanted to end it all here. Just as she was about to deliver the final blow, Ayashi appeared in time and took the knife from her hand. Kanryu immediately kicked Megumi down and repeatedly punched and kicked her to vent his anger. Ayashi reminded Kanryu that Kenshin's group had arrived. The 3 of them stormed inside like a tempest. Against their swords, they easily defeated these soldiers. Against their guns, they also quickly dealt with them all. Kanryu watched from above and could not believe Kenshin's motivation. Megumi had nothing to do with them. Ayashi was not surprised at all. This was the instinct of an assassin. He even wanted to make Kenshin pray for their Oniwaban. Under pressure, Kanryu instead smiled ingratiatingly and immediately offered a large sum of money to buy them off. But this tactic had no effect on Himura Batosai, someone who did not act for material gain. Out of options, Kanryu agreed to release the hostage, but demanded they wait 1 more hour. Seeing Kenshin and the others leaving, Kanryu secretly smiled with satisfaction. He planned to use this hour to force Megumi to reveal the drug formula, and if possible, convince her to stay. But Kenshin had not actually left. He simply slashed a large lantern toward the mansion as a warning to them. Kanryu ordered Ayashi to have Oniwaban guard carefully. At this moment, Ayashi grabbed the merchant by the collar and reminded him that Oniwaban did not belong to Kanryu. They were under his command alone. Ayashi wanted to imprison Megumi in the observation room to stop them. He declared he would make his own decisions here. After being beaten, Megumi finally woke up and realized she was unconscious in a strange place. After learning that Kenshin and everyone had come to rescue her, she instead felt angry and extremely worried for them. Ayashi silently tossed Megumi a short blade, declaring that after eliminating Kenshin's group, she would be next. She could choose to die in shame or glory. Ayashi reminded her that Oniwaban did not operate for material gain. They only wanted to fight. With that, he quickly left. Meanwhile, Kenshin had just entered the mansion when he encountered his first enemy, Hanya. Seeing this one had no intention of backing down, the group had no choice but to resort to violence. Sagara noticed Hanya had 2 iron plates padded into his hands, which was why he had the advantage over Kenshin in the fight a few days ago. Without many words, Kenshin did not care about advantages or disadvantages and immediately took his stance ready to attack. In the first exchange, Hanya attacked head-on with his hands while Kenshin quickly focused on defense rather than offense. This made Myojin, watching from afar, very indignant, thinking such fighting was cowardly. But in truth, Hanya had cast a technique on Kenshin from the previous week without anyone knowing, which created the current situation. Ayashi was very confident in Hanya and his techniques. He simply watched silently from the ballroom above. Kenshin calmly raised his sword in stance. In Sagara's confused gaze, Myojin recognized this as one of the 5 stances in the 5 elements, an attack that would extend one sword to strike and bring down the opponent. Hanya believed this stance could only defend and was difficult to attack with. He said Kenshin seemed to be overrated and was not even comparable to their leader Ayashi. But just as Hanya smugly charged forward, Kenshin dodged like lightning and delivered a powerful blow to his face. Hanya was caught off guard and could not believe it. Kenshin exposed the true nature of Hanya's technique. It came from the horizontal striped tattoos on his arms, which created illusions that distorted the opponent's vision and made them lose accurate judgment, causing their attacks to miss. Because of this, Kenshin had used that sword stance to measure the actual deviation and choose the most accurate attack point, also escaping Hanya's illusion trap. Kenshin had noticed the strangeness from the start and believed the mask was used to prevent opponents from observing his expressions and attack directions. Hanya was not afraid. He simply explained that wearing the mask was only to hide his true face, nothing deeper. Just then, under Kenshin's pressure, the mask broke in 2, revealing a face no different from a monster. The skin on his face was gone, his lips had disappeared, and his eyes were mismatched in size. It turned out he had destroyed his own face so he could disguise himself as anyone, excellently performing his duties as a spy. He recounted his abandoned past with his parents, how he was buried alive, and how he had been saved by Ayashi and Oniwaban. Because of all this, he did not hesitate to sacrifice himself for the organization. Seeing Hanya charge forward, Sagara was also very worried, because fighting someone who did not value their life was like fighting a cotton ball. Kenshin dodged while asking Hanya about Megumi's past. Hanya immediately showed thorough knowledge as the 2 clashed like lightning. Hanya's attack wounded Kenshin, but he himself finally collapsed. Kenshin believed Megumi's past was as tragic as Hanya's, so why did he not show her any sympathy? In the observation room, Kanryu still wanted to talk with Megumi about escaping together. He said they could create a new drug to save everyone from addiction, and they would become good people saving the world. But after hearing everything, Megumi immediately rejected this proposal. Her action made Kanryu instantly turn hostile. After cursing for a long time, he angrily left. Below, after reorganizing their formation, the 3 of Kenshin's group continued into the next room. Greeting them was an iron ball weighing tons hurtling toward them like lightning. Fortunately, Sagara, Kenshin, and Myojin could dodge. This weapon belonged to someone named Shikiju, the main bodyguard of the capital, and also a member of Oniwaban. Facing this physical attack, Sagara immediately stepped forward to block for the other 2. He told them to hurry ahead to save time. He would handle this bastard here. Kenshin accepted for the greater good and carried Myojin into the next room. Shikiju had obtained information about Sagara from Hanya. He was confident that lacking the giant Zanbatsu sword would make Sagara much weaker, allowing him to take Sagara down in an instant. Meanwhile, Kenshin and Myojin quickly proceeded to the next room. Myojin was worried about Sagara, but Kenshin completely, 100%, placed his trust in that young man. In room 2, Sagara was not gaining any advantage against this physical fighter, but his nickname of being strong as an ox was not for show. Sagara immediately broke the iron chain to continue standing and attacking, but his opponent showed no mercy and kept attacking. Just when it seemed Sagara had fallen, Shikaju began telling his past. He was once an agent of Satsuma, the Isshin Shishi faction, but had been defeated by Ayashi when Ayashi was only 13 years old, during an espionage mission ordered by the organization. Drawn by Ayashi's enticing offer of a drug that would quickly make the drinker stronger, Shikaju had accepted and gained his current strength. He was very satisfied with Sagara's strength and smiled invitingly, asking Sagara to join Oniwaban with him. He said Ayashi was much stronger than Kenshin, and people should follow the truly strong. After hearing everything, Sagara laughed mockingly, saying that even if Ayashi was strong, that was all he had. Kenshin was not like them. He not only had greater strength, but was also 100,000 times better person than Ayashi. These words infuriated Shikaju, who swung out an attack. This time Sagara caught both of Shikaju's hands. He continued to provoke, saying that no matter how strong Oniwaban was, if they used their strength as tools for that bastard Kanryu, how could they compare to Himura Batusai and his group? Shikaju grew even more enraged and furiously used his head to continuously attack Sagara, causing blood to pour terrifyingly from his head. But this time, with his arm strength and determination, Sagara was able to easily break all of this bastard's fingers, while Shikaju was stunned and shocked. With one final straight punch to the face, Sagara took him down. Though victorious, Sagara had little strength left. He quickly collapsed unconscious. Meanwhile, in the ballroom, Kenshin and Myojin came face to face with Ayashi. Kenshin followed his usual principle, using words to request they release Megumi and stop this meaningless fighting. But Ayashi was not a coward like Kanryu. Without many words, he simply told Kenshin to draw his sword and find the answer. Myojin, being a child, was pushed out of the battle. Though very angry, he had no other choice. After all, they were not wrong. The boy stood at a distance and confidently said that Ayashi with just that short sword could not defeat Kenshin. Kenshin could indeed easily handle someone with a short sword, but he recognized it as a kodachi, a blade shorter than a katana but longer than a short sword. Being shorter meant weaker attack capability, but its lightweight would greatly aid defense. Without many words, Ayashi immediately charged to attack. He used not only his sword but also physical strikes. Kenshin quickly realized this one was like Hanya, also a martial artist. Facing continuous attacks, Kenshin defended first, then charged forward. He quickly realized this one used the kodachi to create a solid defensive wall for himself, while fighting similarly to Hanya using physical strikes. Ayashi introduced himself as Hanya's master. The level between teacher and student was naturally different. Indeed, Kenshin could not easily defeat him like Hanya. Ayashi wanted to kill the strongest swordsman, Himura Badosai, right here to seize that position. Kenshin slowly stood up. He realized this one did not fight for Kanryu, but for the Tokugawa shogunate that had been toppled by the Meiji Restoration. Ayashi did not deny it. He recalled the actions of someone named Yoshinobu during the Battle of Toba Fushimi. Yoshinobu was the last shogun of the Tokugawa clan, who led his subordinates fleeing from Osaka Castle when the emperor weakened, abandoning tens of thousands of soldiers on the battlefield to pursue cowardly peace. That person had fortified at Kane Temple in Ueno and made Edo Castle surrender without spilling a drop of blood. The shogunate had ended while Oniwaban still had not acted. Ayashi expressed his disappointment at not fighting then, saying that if they had been there, victory would have belonged to the shogunate side. He wanted to end the Meiji Restoration here, and killing Kenshin would prove that the victor in the battle between the Isshin Shishi and the late shogunate forces was Oniwaban. Their goal was to burn everything down and build a completely different Japan. Kenshin mentioned that war. He believed those who fought did so for the country's future, for a better tomorrow. But Ayashi and this Oniwaban were different. They were merely a bloodthirsty, cold-hearted, war-hungry bunch, which was why Kenshin could not let them go. Ayashi coldly declared with certainty that he would win. Let them finish this here quickly. While both were fighting, Kanryu was in his room furious at losing control. He wanted to find a way to eliminate both Batusai and Ayashi here, seizing victory for himself. Just then, a subordinate ran in mentioning some kind of machine, which gave Kanryu an idea and made him instantly smug. Meanwhile, Kenshin seemed to be losing ground. Myojin watching from afar was shocked at this one's cold-bloodedness. Though battered, Kenshin once again stood up, declaring he had found a way to destroy the kodachi. Without many words, Ayashi once again charged to attack. This time Kenshin used his bare hand to grip his own sword tightly and sent the enemy flying. Ayashi's true strength came from his perfect control of the opponent's reach. Myojin also recalled Kaoru's teachings about the importance of finding the opponent's reach. Thus, holding a katana would be advantageous, but against someone with longer reach like the one before him, there would certainly be blind spots. Therefore, Ayashi had used the kodachi to cover that blind spot. Ayashi also calmly exposed Kenshin's countermeasure. He had gripped the least sharp part right at the sword's pommel to avoid deep cuts, as well as to create a new blind spot for his opponent. Ayashi praised Kenshin as a refined assassin, but he also quickly unleashed his stronger technique. Kenshin was stunned by Ayashi's sword dance, his water flow movements combined with martial arts and kodachi. This was the true fighting style of Shinomori Ayashi. Kenshin was indeed in trouble. He was slashed 3 times in the chest by Ayashi and collapsed. Just when it seemed Kenshin had died and Myojin was about to pick up a sword to avenge him, Kenshin calmly stood up to continue fighting with 3 deep wounds on his body. It turned out Kenshin had used his scabbard to reduce the technique's power by half. Ayashi once again performed his sword dance to kill Kenshin. But at that moment, Kenshin gently drew his sword to block Ayashi's attack. The following strikes were all basically countered by him. In the final exchange, Kenshin did not hesitate to drop his sword and use his own hand to block the attack. Kenshin said he did not care about the title of strongest or anything like that. Everyone's only goal was to save Megumi. Ayashi was sent flying, unable to believe he had lost. In his fury, Ayashi threw a powerful punch at Kenshin, then immediately fell unconscious, because during their earlier fight, Kenshin had continuously struck several vital points, but in an instant, Ayashi was able to stand up normally again. He did not understand why Kenshin had not killed him. Kenshin said he was just a wanderer with no intention of killing. He then asked Ayashi why, as Oniwaban's leader, he could have become an officer under the government. Why did he refuse and continue working here? Ayashi lowered his head. What he had were only things he was entitled to enjoy, while abnormal ones like Hayatoko, Bishimi, Honya, and others in Oniwaban could never have such things. How could he abandon them? Ayashi did not want to become such a terrible person. Just as the atmosphere was settling, Kanryu smugly pushed open the door. He brought an enormous gun, the most powerful weapon from America at the time. Hearing the explosions below, Megumi was endlessly worried. Sagara also woke up wanting to go upstairs to check the situation. Honya had also awakened at some point. He did not intend to attack from behind to win, but only wanted to find Ayashi. In the infirmary, Hayatoko and Bishimi also heard. They simply waited in silence. Kanryu continuously fired. Ayashi and Kenshin quickly dodged the bullets. After unleashing his attack, Kanryu smugly declared he wanted to become the world's top arms dealer, starting by selling drugs to raise capital. Money would be power, making those who called themselves strong actually nothing but mosquitoes. Everyone from below arrived just in time. Shikaju immediately charged forward while Kenshin carried Myojin to escape. In this rapidly changing situation, Kanryu immediately aimed his gun at the motionless Ayashi to eliminate him. However, at that moment, Shikaju selflessly threw himself forward to shield Ayashi from the bullets, blood flowing like a river.